The gas station was quiet that afternoon until flashing lights broke the calm. A teenage boy, barely 16, stood frozen beside a pump, confusion etched across his face. Behind him, a police cruiser screeched to a halt, and an officer stepped out, hand already near his holster. To bystanders, it looked like another routine stop, but to the boy it felt like the start of something far worse, a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight. What no one knew yet was that the person speeding toward the scene wasn't just his mother, she was an FBI agent, and this day would expose more than one kind of power. Aram was just trying to get home. The gas tank was nearly empty, and his mother had asked him to fill up before dinner. A good student and quiet kid, he had his headphones in and his hoodie up, lost in a world of music and thought. The small-town gas station was nearly empty except for a few cars and the hum of distant traffic. Then came the police cruiser. The officer had been sitting in his car across the street, scanning the area, when he noticed Aram. Something about the sight of a young black teen pumping gas alone seemed to ignite suspicion. He drove over slowly, eyes narrowing, assumptions already forming. Aram didn't notice the car pull up behind him. He was focused on the meter, counting change, humming along to the beat. When the officer shouted, the sound cut through the air like glass. The moment he turned, fear instantly filled the space between them. The officer's voice rose, commands barked, sharp gestures, hand twitching near his gun. Passers-by began to look, their expressions uneasy, unsure whether to step in or keep walking. Miles away, Aram's mother, Maya, was returning from a long day at the bureau. Her phone buzzed with a call from her son, but all she heard through static was panic, a mix of wind, shouting, and fear. Her heart dropped. She turned her car around without thinking, siren-like determination taking hold. She had spent her career fighting corruption, training agents, uncovering injustice. But she never imagined the next battle would be fought in her own hometown, for her own child's safety. By the time Maya reached the gas station, the scene had spiraled into chaos. The officer had forced Aram to the ground, hands behind his head, despite his pleas and confusion. Another patrol unit had arrived, its lights painting red and blue across the pavement. The officers talked quickly, trying to justify their actions to each other even as they tightened their grip. Bystanders began filming, shaky phones capturing every moment. Some shouted that the boy hadn't done anything. Others just stood silent, paralyzed by the weight of the scene. Maya's car screeched into the lot. She jumped out before the engine stopped, her badge still hanging from her belt, adrenaline firing through every nerve. Her training told her to stay calm, assess, negotiate. But instinct, a mother's instinct, took over. Every detail hit her at once, the fear in her son's eyes, the officer's hand on his weapon, the trembling in Aram's shoulders. The air was electric with tension. The lead officer, the one who had started it all, turned toward her with irritation, ready to bark orders. But something in her stance stopped him cold. She walked forward with authority, her eyes unflinching, posture unyielding. The silence was heavy. The crowd could sense it. This wasn't just another parent. The officer hesitated, but pride made him push further. He muttered something under his breath, something only Aram heard. A quiet insult that sliced through the air like a blade. Aram winced. That was the breaking point. Maya reached for her belt and pulled out her credentials. Not a wallet, not a phone, but an FBI badge. The sunlight hit the emblem just right, glinting in a way that made every onlooker go still. The gas station fell silent. For a brief moment, even the wind seemed to pause. The officer's expressions changed instantly. Confusion, fear, guilt, calculation, all in rapid succession. The man who had been shouting now stammered. Realizing too late who he was dealing with, Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Every word she spoke carried the weight of justice and fury tightly restrained. The body cams recorded everything. The unnecessary aggression, the baseless suspicion, the unmistakable racial bias. Within minutes, backup arrived. Not local cops, but federal investigators Maya had already called while racing there. The same system that had often failed families like hers was now forced to confront itself in real time. And through it all, Aram stood silent, tears mixing with dust and disbelief. His mother reached out, helping him up, her touch steady but trembling. She had faced dangerous criminals, high-stakes cases, and violent offenders, but nothing had ever felt as harrowing as seeing her son on the ground because of the color of his skin. The gas station turned into a scene of reckoning. The lead officer's words were replayed by witnesses, recorded, and shared online before the dust even settled. His confidence crumbled as supervisors arrived, watching the footage from their own body cams in disbelief. Maya stood by her son, her FBI badge visible, her silence louder than any argument. The bystanders who had hesitated before now stepped closer, a woman offering water, a man shaking his head in disgust, a teenager whispering that he'd caught it all on video. It wasn't just about one boy or one cop anymore. It was about the pattern, the same story playing out in different cities, different names, different outcomes. But this time, there was accountability standing in uniform right before them. The lead officer was ordered to stand down, his weapon holstered. His voice cracked as he tried to justify what had happened. "Suspicious behavior," he muttered. "Match the description." The excuses sounded hollow in the open air. Maya didn't need to say much. She simply handed her phone to the supervising sergeant, replaying the live call where her son's voice shook with fear and confusion. Every second of it was evidence. Aram leaned into his mother, exhausted, still trembling. He wasn't thinking about the cameras or the headlines. He was thinking about how quickly innocence could become danger, how a stop for gas had turned into a fight for dignity. The officers who had joined the scene looked away, ashamed or conflicted. For once, silence wasn't compliance. It was reflection. Maya met the lead officer's gaze one last time. There was no hatred there, only a heavy truth, the kind that stays with you long after the lights fade. In the days that followed, the footage went viral. News outlets replayed it again and again, the confrontation, the badge reveal, the stunned reaction. Some viewers saw it as a turning point. Others dismissed it as another story in an endless cycle. The officer was placed on leave pending investigation. Internal Affairs launched a full review. The department released a statement about training and accountability, but the public knew this was about more than policy. It was about perception, bias, and change. For Maya and Aram, healing didn't come easily. The memory replayed in quiet moments, the fear, the shame, the disbelief that such a thing could happen even to them. But it also sparked something deeper. Maya began using her platform to advocate not just as an agent, but as a mother. She spoke at schools, police academies, and community events, telling their story not to seek sympathy, but to demand awareness. Aram, once shy and reserved, started writing essays about identity, justice, and resilience. His words reached classrooms and online readers who saw themselves in his fear and courage. The gas station became a symbol, a reminder of how quickly assumptions can ignite tragedy and how courage can rewrite the ending. One evening, months later, Maya returned there quietly. The lights buzzed overhead, cars came and went, life moved on. But as she stood near the pump where her son had once stood in terror, she realized something powerful. Fear had been replaced by resolve. She looked up at the stars, the reflection of red and blue long gone, and whispered a silent promise to keep fighting, to keep teaching, to keep exposing truth, because racism doesn't vanish when the cameras stop rolling. It hides in everyday moments, waiting to be challenged, and sometimes it takes one mother's badge and a nation's attention to make the world pause and finally look closer.